All toy restorations will be handled by the YouTubers controlling each channel. Reproduction parts may not be used where there are Star Wars forums. Toy restorers and collectors are available. Toy-polloi has been assigned.
Welcome to Toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we're going to be making a prototype version of this vintage Kenner $6 million man doll. Now recently you'll have seen that I actually restored this figure from a sort of a broken one that I had, and went through a few different stages of fixing him up and making parts for him, and it was a really fun project. And while I was researching that project, I found a couple of images from a very early Kenner promotional catalogue from 1975 that showed a much earlier version of this doll, and it looks to me like it was a prototype version, one that they'd used for some photography, but one that was actually never released. And there were a few subtle changes to that doll, and I thought it'd be quite nice to actually make a version of that so I can add that to my $6 million man collection. If we take a close look at the image from the catalogue, you can see straight away that the logo on Steve Austin's chest has been modified. It looks like a much simpler version of the logo, with the text being smaller, and it's actually a sort of a round target rather than the round with square bottom target that you get on the final version. I'm guessing what happened with this is that they saw that the text on that little logo is so small you could barely read it, so changing the logo to the final design gave them a lot more space. So that's the first thing that we're going to do, is make a new version of that logo, the prototype version of the logo, and get that working. Then you can see that Steve Austin's trousers are also held on in a different way. The final release of the trousers have a bit of elastic at the top of them, but this early set looked like there's a cord that ties around his waist that you can then tie in a bow at the front. So I'm going to take some of the old trousers, we'll remove the elastic, and we'll make them so that they are a tie-up version. The engine block that Steve Austin comes with has also had some changes made to it. In this early promo photo you can see that the silver parts on the final one have been vac chrome metallized, so I'm going to try and do that onto the block as well. There are some other changes to the block that I'm not going to worry about getting exactly right, but we'll go through those later on in the video. So the first thing I need to do is really sort out the emblem that is on the front of Steve Austin's chest, as I think that's the main thing that everyone's going to see. I do here, as you can see, have a spare Steve Austin doll. When I was fixing up that one, I had the parts to build another one, so this is going to be the one that we are going to turn into the prototype version of Steve Austin. I also have some spare clothes. I was given a huge pile of sort of rather rough and ready clothes by Lawrence from Toy Planet UK, and I've taken the best out of those, given them a good clean, and this is what we're going to be using for making the sort of modified outfit. And I also have a spare engine block that's gone a bit yellowed, so this is the one that we're going to modify. But as I say, the first thing we need to do is sort out this little emblem here, so let's make a new version of that matches the very early prototype version. Creating the new prototype version of the chest emblem didn't take quite as long as I thought it would, because I've actually created quite a few versions of Steve Austin's chest emblem over the years, and I was able to use those as a basis to make this prototype version. And so after 25 minutes work, I've ended up with this, which is the new sort of prototype version of his logo. And you can see I've managed to recreate it really quite nicely. I think that's quite a good sort of representation of what you can see in those photos. So I'm very happy with how that worked. There are a few ways that you can actually print this out. I've printed this here onto some fabric sticky backed printer paper. I've shown this before in the previous restoration video I did for Steve Austin. It's basically it is a fabric paper that you can put through the printer, and it's got a fabric feel to it, so it's very easy to print things like this out. The old way that I've done this gives you much the same result. This is using iron-on transfer paper, so you print the logo out onto that and then you iron it onto some white cotton and you end up with a version like this. I think for sort of ease, actually this fabric printer paper is just much quicker, so I'm going to be using that a lot more often. So you can see here I printed out a few of them, and I've already cut one out. So here is a cut out version of the new prototype Steve Austin chest logo. All we've got to do is remove the backing paper like so. So we take that off, and then we can stick that exactly where the final logo goes, just on the left side of the jacket. You can see that looks pretty cool there. If I bring in an original one, you can see what a difference it is. So that's the prototype, that's the original one. I think it looks really nice, and I'm very pleased with the end result of that. Now for the trousers and adding the cord around the top, I have a couple of ideas, but I was chatting with Mrs. toy-polloi and she reckoned that the simplest way of doing it was the way that I'd originally thought of, which is trying to thread something through and sort of above the seam that has been sewn around the top of these trousers. This pair, the elastic has gone, but the seam is actually in relatively good condition. My other thought was to completely unpick the top of a pair of trousers. I have some here that have already started falling apart, and then sew a little sort of flap over the top so that we could then thread something through, but that's quite a lot of work, and I think this way it will work sort of, it's much quicker and is much easier to do. So for the cord, I'm going to be using this, which is embroidery thread. It's just a bit thicker than sort of cotton, and it looks about the same thickness as the stuff sort of seen in that original photo. So I've cut a small amount of that off. I've threaded it into a needle with a much bigger eye, and the idea is that I'm going to push this into that seam all the way around the edge. I'm going to start at the back and do one half and then come out this side here, and then I'll go back and I'll do the other half. So we'll end up with two bits of the cord hanging out of the front, which we can tie into a bow at the end. I think we should end up with something that does look remarkably like the original one. So basically I'm going to get this needle and I'm going to go in as close to the back as possible and sort of underneath and through the threads, and then I'm going to sort of push the needle through without piercing any of the fabric. I saw Mrs. toy-polloi do this earlier. She showed me sort of a quick way of doing it, and she did it very quickly and very neatly. I don't know how neatly I'm going to be able to do this. I think I should be able to get it round. Oh yeah, it's going quite well. Easier than I thought, I have to say. And then I want this to come out of the front, sort of just one side of the seam in the middle. So let's push that through. It may be this doesn't want to come through. I have to cut a hole. The other suggestion that Mrs. toy-polloi had was actually just to come back out of the seam on the inside, like so, and then have the thread hang over the front. So maybe that's the way to do it. So you can see there, that's the cord coming through, and what we'll end up with is that sort of hanging over the front, which we can tie into a bow. So I've now got to re-thread the other end of this, and we'll do it round the other side. So let's re-thread that like that. Now I can do the same on the other side. So again, we're going to go under the stitching and push that in. Oh, that seems to be going a lot easier this side. Okay, we can then pull that through. And there we go. We've now got a couple of threads hanging out the front of the trousers, so we can sort of tie a bow quite neatly on the front. So let's get these trousers and the new jacket onto Steve Austin and see what they look like. Okay, so you can see I've put his trousers on. We can now tie these on properly. So I'm just going to do a quick sort of knot there so we can tie them up nice and tight. That's what will keep the trousers up. And then we can put a bow in the front, which I think is what you're seeing sort of hanging down in that promotional shot, is a bit of a bow. So I'll just loop these over. If I can get that through, and then we can trim off any excess. I've left the thread nice and long just so we've got lots to work with. So you can see there we have a bow, which is going to look much like what it does in the shot, and we'll just trim these down a bit just because we don't need a huge amount of this thread hanging through, but just enough that it looks the part. I think that sort of looks like what we have in the photo. So we've got a pair of trousers that are tied on with a bow rather than elasticated. Now let's put his top on and see what that looks like. Okay, yeah, that is starting to look really nice. So you can see there's the prototype logo on the front of his chest and the bits of cord that hold his trousers up. Now while I was putting this together, I was thinking it'd actually be quite nice to do some custom arm chips as well. In the prototype photos you can see that he does have arm chips in, but you can't tell if they're exactly the same as the final release one. So I'm going to use a little bit of artistic license and make some sort of prototype arm chips that look slightly different to the original ones that will match this logo that we have on his chest. So let's make those just so that we can say that every part of him is a prototype, even though you can't really see these in the photos that we have available. Right, here is Steve Austin's arm. I've just quickly taken that off so that we can access the chips. As you can see, that's an original chip there, and we have the upper arm chip here at the back. Again, these are original, and this is how it was released, so we have a yellow background. And what I was thinking, it would be nice just to make it match that little chest logo a bit better, and the chest logo has a lot more blue in it. So what I've done is I've made a blue version of the chip background, and that's what we're going to be using today. Now in my previous restoration video, I actually showed you how to make some chips, and I have a whole bag here that I've been working on for other projects that I have. So I've got an upper arm chip blank, and I have got a lower arm chip blank. So I'm going to stick these onto these chips to make the prototype chips. These are made out of clear resin, and I showed you in the sort of restoration revisited video how I went about doing that. We're going to stick them on in exactly the same way. So I have some double-sided tape here. What we do is we get a strip of the double-sided tape and we stick that over the printout here. It looks like you're doing this wrong when you're doing that, but this is the way that I've sort of worked it out. We can then take off the top layer of the double-sided tape, and you can actually then see the image through again, and then we take the chips and we put them the right way round. So I'm just going to use these original ones to work out which way round they should go. It's never quite obvious to me, so that's that way round. And we stick that over the top of the image like so. I'll do the same with this one, which looks like it should go round that way. Make sure that's stuck on good and proper, and you can see straight away how quickly these start to look like bionic arm chips. Now all we've got to do is cut them out. So a pair of scissors and I'll get these cut out. And there we go. We have prototype arm chips using a blue background rather than the yellow background of the final version. All the files that I've made for this project will be available from toy-polloi.com. So if you want to have a go at making your own prototype version of Steve Austin, you'll be able to download this bionic arm chip and also the emblem that goes on the front of his chest. Let's put these into the arm and see how they look. So that one goes like that, and that one goes like that. So there we go, you can see this is now a prototype bionic arm that we can put back on the figure. I'm really happy how this is turning out so far. It does look a whole lot like the prototype image. As you can see, we've got the logo on, we've got the trousers with the proper cord around the middle, and we've also now got some prototype bionic chips hidden under the arm skin there. What we've got to do now is sort out the engine block and make this look all nice and chromed. From the Kenner catalogue you can see that the engine block that Steve Austin holds is slightly different. It looks like the red portion is not fully sort of in place when they took the photo. It may be that this bottom section is missing. You can also see that the exhausts that are on the side of the block are much larger, so those are things that they've obviously changed towards the end of the production. But the main thing that they haven't done on this engine block, the sort of final release version, is chrome plated it. You can see in the image that the whole of this silver part of the block has been chrome plated, and it really looks rather quite striking. So I thought it would be nice to just modify this and chrome plate this silver part of the engine block rather than making any of the other changes, because those are really sort of quite subtle. I think the main thing we need to do is chrome plate it, and there are a few options that we can do to do that. Some of them are sort of simpler than others. I've previously shown in some videos using Molotow liquid chrome pens, and these do give quite a nice sort of chrome finish, but it's a little bit temperamental. You have to leave it for quite a long time to cure, and it does dull if you handle it too much. So I wasn't going to use that one. I bought another type of paint recently, which is this stuff, which is called Mirror. It's by Stuart Semple. It's really quite expensive as well, this stuff. This small 15ml bottle of paint cost over £35. So I've tried this once, and it does do a really quite nice sort of mirror finish, but it's not quite perfect. So what I thought I would do with this one today is actually get it properly chrome plated. Now you'll have seen in some of my previous videos I do actually have a chrome plating, sort of an electroplating kit, which was very kindly sent to me by Gold Solutions Plating. Well, I've actually been in touch with Paul, who runs that company, and asked him if he would chrome this for me, because it's quite a complicated shape, and I think it's probably beyond my skills to get done as well as it needs to be done. So he has very kindly offered to do this. So I'm going to be sending this off to him at Gold Solutions Plating, and he is going to do it for me. I'm not quite sure what finish he's going for. I think he said it was rhodium or something like that, but it will be a really nice shiny finish. So let's get this packed up and posted over to him, and we'll see what the results are like when he sends it back. I imagine it will look absolutely stunning, because he's done some bits for me before. He did the Bullet Man helmet from Action Man, and that looks fantastic. So yeah, let's get this sent over to him and we'll see what it looks like. Once Paul has received the engine block off me, the first stage of the process is actually to spray it with a conductive paint. This is necessary because without that none of the metal solutions will actually adhere to the surface. Once that's done, the block is then lowered into the copper electroforming solution, where the surface slowly turns into a solid metal, and it comes out looking really lovely and shiny. This is then nickel plated, which is the next stage in the process, and on top of the nickel a thin layer of gold is also plated, which will allow the rhodium to attach easily. Then the final stage is to plate it in rhodium, and this gives you the final really nice shiny finish that is what I wanted for this project. And here is the finished block that Paul has sent back to me. This is looking really nice indeed. It's a rhodium finish, as I said. I think earlier on I mentioned it as a sort of chrome finish. Basically I call anything that's shiny like this chrome, but the actual metal plate on this is rhodium, and it's got a sort of nice weight to it now. Adding the metal surface to it gives it a little bit of extra weight, so it feels a little bit more like an engine block. But you can see here how shiny this looks. Now Gold Solutions Plating do provide kits for you to do this for yourself. I have an old kit that they sent to me, which I've used a few times, but they've improved the process and improved their kit, so getting this sort of finish now is so much easier than the initial kit that they sent me. In fact, I think it doesn't take much effort at all to get this sort of shine. So do check out their website. I'll put a link in the description, so go and check that out if you want to have a go yourself, because you can see the results are really nice, and this is far superior to the paints that I've used previously, because it's so tough and so sort of durable. But let's take a look at this with the Steve Austin figure and see how it looks with that. Okay, he really does now start to look like the prototype version of Steve Austin, which is what I wanted. The shiny engine block just looks absolutely lovely. It really does look so much better than the grey one. It's actually quite disappointing that Kenner didn't make the engine block this shiny when they finally released it. I think they could have easily electroplated or vac metalized it in some way, and I think it just makes it look a whole lot better. So I'm very pleased with how that has turned out. Now there's one final thing in the image that I'm not quite sure about. It's very hard to see because we only have this one image of the prototype, what colour his socks are. The final version of Steve Austin comes with white socks, which is what he currently has on here, but I think in the image it looks like he is wearing red socks. So I've actually bought a pair of red socks. These are from Action Man. There are various versions of Action Man as a footballer, and one of the versions he comes with these lovely red socks. So I'm just going to swap these out and put red socks on this Steve Austin, and I think that will probably be the final thing we need to do. Then we have a lovely prototype version of Steve Austin. So let's quickly just change his socks and we'll class that as done. And here is the fully finished prototype version of Steve Austin, the $6 million man. I'm not sure the red socks were actually sort of necessary. Now that I put them on, you can't see the socks at all, whereas with the white ones you could clearly see those sort of poking out. So maybe they are red socks, maybe they're not. It's very hard to tell. But I thought for the small cost of buying some Action Man socks, it was worth doing. Otherwise, the figure is now all done, and I'm really very pleased with it. It does look exactly like that shot that we see of the prototype version of Steve Austin. So what I've done is I've replaced the badge on his chest, we've sorted out the pull cord on his trousers, we've given him new bionic chips, and we have a fully chrome plated engine block. I think that's pretty much everything that we see in the photo, so I'm going to call this prototype version of Steve Austin done. I do need to say a massive thank you to Lawrence from Toy Planet UK, who very kindly helped me out with some of the outfits that I've been using for this sort of customizing, and also Paul from Gold Solutions Plating, who very kindly electroplated the engine block for me. I'm going to put links to both Lawrence's Toy Planet UK Facebook page and also Gold Solutions Plating in the description for this video. So the files I've created for this project will be available for download from toy-polloi.com, so if you want to have a go at making your own prototype Steve Austin, go and check those out. If you've enjoyed this video, then why not check out some of my other Steve Austin $6 million man projects. I've done quite a few now over the years. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.